We are at it again, our underground wine event virtually. So sad. I miss you guys. You know, I absolutely, I feel like this is like, you know, one of our groups that hangs out after. We're the rowdy party, right, Laura? Afterwards, the after party. This is it.
I'm staying out of that. I wasn't there.
You were always there. Leo, you're off video. What happened to you? Make sure you get, there you go. You get your video back on. All right. So we've got tonight three, we're calling it the foreign invasion. And of course, you know, I've already objectified these gentlemen on Patreon, and we absolutely, you know, put their pictures up because they're just three hotties from foreign lands, and they have different philosophies as a result of it. And that's actually, it's not because you guys are so good looking that we put you together. It's more because you have different orientations. So I would like everyone to introduce themselves, and we'll go in alphabetical order. Lorenzo, you go first with Andis, then Leo, and then Oded. Please talk about your winery, the kind of wine that you make, and then we'll get into some detailed questions.
Awesome. Well, first of all, Happy New Year to everybody. I mean, it's finally 2021. You know, we've been looking forward to this new year, and thank you to Laura and Elizabeth for introducing us to this amazing cult, to this group that it's amazing. I mean, it's been the highlight of my California journey. So since I moved to California, I've never met so many cool people. Like, because usually when I meet, or like, I want to hang out for a few minutes and then move on. Versus you guys, I wish we can spend more time together. It's really been an honor for me.
Tell us about Andis.
Yeah. So I'm Lorenzo. I'm one of the partners at Andis Wines. As a small company, we kind of wear multiple hats. I work directly with a consulting winemaking team, with the winemakers, and I oversee pretty much from what vineyards we're harvesting and what grapes we're working with, and then have some of my inputs on the philosophy of winemaking, because Andis Wines, it's a modern winery with California roots, but we look more forward to bridge that gap between old world and new world. We hopefully will get to there one day. I always tell people that Andis Wines, it's a old world wine with the California sunshine. I can't do nothing about that. I could put umbrellas around my vineyard. That's what we have, and that's what we have to deal with it. As a winery, we're more known for traditionally grapes grown in the foothills, like Zinfandel. Our vineyards dates back to the 1800s. One of the vineyards actually is planted in 1869, which dates one of the oldest vineyards in California. But as well, new addition to our region, like Italian grapes like Barbera, and Schioppettino is the most recent one. But as well, Sauvignon Blanc. We work with Rhone grapes, Petit Syrah, and Grenache. But our main focus, it's Zinfandel and single vineyard Zinfandels. We as well rescued a few vineyards that were designated to be grafted over more traditionally grapes. We rescued a 45-year-old Semillon, which it's unique for California to have an old vine head-trained Semillon, and that's our pride, to be honest. We've been featured in a few publications as one of the top Semillon producers, and that's lucky. It's not that smart. We just got lucky.
That wine is absolutely amazing. So Lorenzo is our representative from the Sierra Foothills region, and he is going to talk about that. And of course, we did a podcast about it where Lorenzo went into a lot of great detail about it, and we'll talk more about Andis in a second. Leo, would you like to please talk about Leo Steen? Leo's name is Leo Hansen, not Leo Steen. So Leo, if you could unmute your mic, and explain what you do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Leo Steen Hansen. Sorry for the confusion. So my middle name is Steen, family middle name on my dad's side, where I grew up in Denmark in the restaurant trade. My parents were my dad was a chef and my mom was working at the hotel as well. So I think naturally I just had a passion for food and wine. I grew up working with my parents at a fairly early age after school, and ended up going into this business, the restaurant business, even I was told not to, for good reasons. But so I did, and chose the sort of front of the house. And long story short, I kind of fell in love with the food and wine more so probably than the long hours and the nights. But took my sommelier exam in Denmark back in the later 90s and wanted more. I wanted to learn more and see more sort of practical come work a harvest. So I ended up in Healdsburg, where Oded and I were sitting right now. I actually came to Healdsburg for the harvest of 1999. And I lived just down the street from where I'm sitting right now. So it's kind of funny. I was supposed to be here for 3 months, and needless to say, this is a long internship now, 21 years later. So it's been a long journey of just exploring, and it's like, I don't know, I don't think you can ever get enough of, another vintage you want to finish and things just move on. So I worked around for another winery for many years, and I've been in Australia working harvest, etc. So, but my own brand I founded in 2004 while I was working as a sommelier at the Hotel Healdsburg. That was fairly new, open back then, and has been focused around Chenin Blanc, which I believe we're going to get into further on. So
that's a great summary. So Oded.
Hi everybody, I'm Oded Shakked. Hopefully you can pronounce it by the end of the podcast. And I was born in Israel. I was an embassy brat, so I was raised a little bit all over the planet. And in Israel, we have mandatory military service. So I went to my military service 3 years from 18 to 21. I grew up I was born in Haifa, which is like the Israeli San Francisco, right on top of Mount Carmel. And then most of my life, though, I grew up in Herzliya, which is a little beach town just north of Tel Aviv. So I was one of the first surfers in my hometown, one of the group of first surfers in Israel. And after my military service, I rather than just go straight into school, I always thought I was going to go study architecture, but I just didn't feel like doing it. So I built surfboards for a living, and I used to work 9 months out of the year and then go surfing for 3 months every year. And the waves in Israel are fun, but they're kind of tiny. So we used to go to the closest place with big waves, nicer waves, was the Atlantic coast of Europe. So we used to go to France, to Biarritz, to Osgore, Hendaye, to Portugal, and to Spain. And over there, I kind of got exposed to wine. And the truth is that I didn't know, but I kind of fell in love with it there, especially when we actually dropped a friend in Pomerol to work for a harvest because he was going to save money and go to India. And then I came back to Israel after one of the trips, and a very good friend of the family who actually was at UC Davis doing a sabbatical in chemistry told me, you could actually study winemaking. And this is way back in 83. To make a long story short, in 84, I packed my bags, went to UC Davis to study winemaking, and never looked back. I just feel I'm so lucky. I just found what really fits me. I still love doing it. I'm still learning. I was really, really lucky that while I was at UC Davis, I had both a champagne experience. I worked for Domaine Chandon, sparkling wine, which is one of the most technical wines to produce. And then in 87, I was in Bordeaux. I was the first American intern at Chateau Lafite. So when I got back, I got hired right away as an intern for the Jordan family right here in Healdsburg. So in 1988, I show up in Healdsburg. I think I was the only male without the belt buckle the size of a dinner plate. And but I fell in love with this town. I always tell people I literally felt there's roots growing from the bottom of my feet. Took 2 years before I could find an espresso in this town. I stayed with the Jordan family for 18 years at J Vineyards and Winery, making sparkling wines, Pinot Noir, Pinot Gris. But one of my loves has always been Syrah. It actually started in France. I've always liked Syrah, and the Jordan family did not want to do any, so I basically started my own little brand while I was still working for the Jordan family. And since I only thought it was going to be a hobby, I called it Longboard Vineyards, so I could tax deduct my surf trips. But life just happens, and in '05 I left the corporate world and have been concentrating on nothing but longboard vineyards ever since. I have almost 7 acres of my own. I grow Merlot, Malbec, Syrah, a couple of Petit Syrah and other blenders into the Syrah, and now Grenache and Pinot Noir also. And the rest I buy from growers that are all around me. So I've been making wine in this region for 30-something years. And, somehow I'm still enjoying it. So Longboard is a small brand, mostly direct, almost none in distribution, very little distribution. And I think mostly I'm about learning, about complexity, and above all about food, because I'm a foodie. I like to cook, I like to eat, and it's all, when I make a wine, I think about, okay, what am I going to cook with it? These days, anything that goes with the Dungeness crab, that's what I like to start with, sparkling right now here.
I have a question for each of you also, because you are all Oded, I'm going to include you in this, even though you're Israeli. Lorenzo, you are Albanian and Italian. Leo, you're a Dane, and Oded, you're a mutt with, some Israeli and some of everything, really. So what about the European sensibility? How does that play into the way that you look at wine? And not just that, as you sort of came here, I'm sure, I know Lorenzo and I have had a lot of conversations about this, because it was really it's so different here, right? The priorities are different. The ideas about wine are different. People want sippers, right? They're not always thinking about food. I think in Europe, it's perfectly acceptable to make a wine that we might find unbalanced in some ways, but because it's going to go with the food. But here, that's not quite as acceptable. After you have each been here for a period of time, do you feel that you have kept your international global sensibility, or have you just sort of morphed into it? Leo, you start.
I mean, that's a good question. I'd have to say, if I back up, I try and say, when people ask me what's your wine you want to be in France or anywhere else, if we're talking Chenin Blanc, I always say, I make wine in California, and I'm proud of making wine in California, and that doesn't mean they can't be done in a style that is leaner, low alcohol, what have you, as a new or an old version of California wine, how they used to be made. And so, but to your point, I think, I'm very connected. I try and teach my kids Danish. I go there, and I take my family as well, at least once a year and stuff. And so I feel like, there's definitely a connection. If it's not intentional, but wines are, for me, made to be enjoyed with food and at the table. And some wines might be a little aggressive on that account in my lineup, where some of them are really, they really need the food to round them off, or to soften them, and to show the true colors, and show how they really work together. So I don't make what I would call cocktail wines, on its own, something that's just a big bomb of a lot of different stuff. I play more on something that's acidic, low alcohol, that is savory, and it's okay to be herbaceous or green. If it's red or white, doesn't matter. So
yeah, I think that goes back to this friend of mine who's been on the podcast a few times. He unfortunately has since left wine, but we had this conversation, I think it was on the show, maybe it was privately, about he's from the UK, and he made wine in France. He was a rosé guy. This is Ian Rennick for patrons and other people who listen to the show a lot. He always used to say, like, you know what? There are a lot of French wines and Italian wines that we would consider them imbalanced, but if they were not, if we had like a full round wine that was perfect to drink, then it wouldn't go with food, because you need some things sticking out. You need some increased acidity, or you need, a little bit of a lower alcohol thing, or you need sometimes residual sugar to balance the screaming acidity to make the wine go with food. And I think it's just a very different sensibility that you're articulating. Lorenzo, how do you feel about that?
Not to repeat what Leo said, but for me, I never ever looked wine as just simply a beverage. Actually wine came after. It's food and wine. It's not wine and food. And it's always, for me, I'd come around the table. For me, I can't even imagine to drink. I do drink wine right now. I'm drinking wine without a food, and it would not be fair saying that, oh, I never drink wine without food. But when we put a bottle of wine together on the process, when we're like composing a blend or a varietal, we always think about what this wine will pair for, and we try to come around of a stylistic of cuisine. And yes, acidity is the most important thing in a wine, like seasoning and salt, fat, and other things are in addition. And those components, for me, if they don't blend together, I don't enjoy either of them. You can eat the best dish in the world with the worst wine, and you're not going to have that experience. You're not going to remember neither of them. And that's what I try. I've tried so hard in the last 6 years that I've been in California to not lose it. Even that sometimes I've entered the process of Californications, and you have to not to lose it. I'm still married.
Can I just point out, which Leo talked about his restaurant background. You said absolutely zero about how you had the most popular restaurant in the city of Florence for like 5 or 10 years or whatever it is, and you just walked away from it when it was at its absolute height. So Lorenzo is a restaurateur, and also I think that the thing is that you're Italian, and I mean, you're mostly Italian, right? I mean, and so growing up in Italy, having that sensibility, you just don't think about, it's like the Holy Trinity. It's bread, olive oil, and wine, right? I mean, like, what else is there?
Yeah, actually today somebody asked me, I hired an Italian guy to help me work, and as well so I can keep practicing the Italian language. We were thinking today on the road, is like, what is setting up a table for dinner? It was always olive oil, wine at the table, and I cannot even imagine. And that's you said it right. It's a trilogy. You can't go away from them. You take one out, it's like a chair that it's not balanced anymore. You're always gonna wobble. And for me, wine is a component of the food, as vice versa. Food is a component of the wine. And that's what I think I strive the most here at Andis Wines. In the last 6 years, I insisted, and I've been lucky enough that my partners in business have allowed me to implement that stylistic of European-driven style wine and acid-driven wine, balanced wine. I wish I could say that our wines are like at what is considered low alcohol, but it's Sierra Foothills. If you start to move away from, if you force something that is not naturally done, you will end up with a product that, yes, you have a number on the back that measures the alcohol, but it's not going to be pleasant. There are some numbers that you have to respect. It's Mother Nature. You can't. You heard
me in the alcohol podcast say, I don't care about the number. I care about the balance. I think that's very true. There's many lessons to be learned from places like Sierra Foothills, Walla Walla, Washington, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, some parts of Southern Italy. You're not going to get a low alcohol level in an Aglianico from Southern Italy and have it be any good. So, I mean, it's all about the whole total package. Absolutely. Oded, can you talk about your sensibility and how that has come about? I mean, from the Israeli perspective, wine, we're big Jews. Besides the Manischewitz, no, I'm just kidding. But I mean, Israel didn't have a huge wine culture when you were growing up. I mean, it just started. So, I mean, we talk about this all the time, that it's like moving along, not quite there yet, blah, blah, blah. But so what about from your days of working in these amazing vineyards, tasting all this wine while you were surfing, while you were traveling, stuck with you or still sticks with you? And I know you go back to Israel, or you pre-COVID, you did a lot.
So first of all, Israel is definitely developing, and that's awesome. Growing up, since I'm of German and Czech origin, we always had grandparents always had wine on the table, lunch and dinner. So I was exposed. One side, grandpa was a big grappa drinker, which like made me never want to drink grappa again in my life. But there was definitely not a real tradition when I left Israel in the early 80s, but it's all changed since then. But I gotta say that it kind of ties into what's happening here. I'm an American now, and I'm really proud of how we changed the whole food and wine culture in America in really in the span of 30 years. I mean, I love to tell the story of going to a San Francisco white tablecloth restaurant and seeing somebody order a well done filet mignon and right away putting A1 sauce on it and ketchup. And I raised kids in Healdsburg, and when they were 10 years old, they were saying, "Dad, can we have sushi today?" So that's a tremendous change. That's something that took 700 years in Europe. We are fast learners in here. And that's why I think stuff that we used to rely or think about in the wine industry in the early 80s, alcohol levels, everybody wanted big alcohol because it was all about the trophy, and then it was all about the ratings. I mean, in Europe, who cares about the rating? If somebody gave it a 90 whatever, one of my best wines, I'm really proud. I got a 78 rating on it. It's one of the wines that we love.
The
The
best.
same wine. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's the kind Syrah. It got a 78
that's
from
a
a
great
nameless
wine.
publication, and a British publication gave it a 5-star review with like the best example of Syrah. That's what Syrah should be. So it's like, who cares? It's like,
And it's, well, I
so
mean, we've
we've
talked about this many
developed, and
times.
I think
It's not, it's just a game. It's a game.
yeah,
And I think, you don't have to play it. All right.
but
So
it doesn't
Lorenzo,
happen overnight. And I think the continuum, and I think we're in a good space. We've developed this in America. So now there's a food and wine tradition, and then people can leave behind formulas and perceptions and just put it in your mouth and see if you like it. Play with it.
all right, we're going to go get a little specific here. So Lorenzo, talk to us about what it is like to make wines in Sierra Foothills and what's good about it, what's hard about it, and the fact that you're doing, Italian varietals. I mean, do you see any similarities to where, to certain regions of Italy? I mean, is this like Southern Italy? Are you having that in mind at all? Or are you just totally in the mindset of the foothills and what's your mindset?
So making wine in the foothills, I think that if I have to pick one word, I would say it's freedom, because I can do whatever I want. I mean, there are 168 grapes that grow in the foothills, so I don't have to respond to any associations or to give a check to anybody and say, hey, what am I doing? Am I doing it right? But at the same time, I consider it very lucky and very fun to do this in the foothills because the microclimate it's very similar to what I would consider the Mediterranean microclimate. And just to tie the answer with European and Italian, what region would be? I think the foothills, it's hard to pin it to a region. Southern Italy would be the closest one, but at the same time, our second most popular grape is Barbera, which grows in completely the opposite. I almost made a wine called Garibaldi because he was known for unifying Italy, south and north. I wanted to make a Barbera Primitivo and just called it Garibaldi, but I don't know if I'll be able to do it. But so the fun part, it's I'm open to so many grapes. I have grapes from Portugal, from Spain, from France, from Italy. But the hurdle is. How can I say it politically correct so I don't get in trouble?
Right, we got in trouble last. There's not a whole lot of other people around. You're a little bit of an island, right? It's taking a longer time to coalesce.
Correct. I
Is it
think
that? Yes.
Foothills, it's moving towards what Sonoma and Napa have done, and then we're just going to get there. We're right behind them. You know, it's just a matter of time. Growers are open mind now to do different farming, and it's been amazing. More cold winemakers and great wineries are moving in our region, and that it's helping us raise the bar as a whole region.
But also raise the price of grapes, right?
That's
the problem.
The issue that I have here, because out of region wineries, thanks to that 5 to 15, 25%, it had raised significantly by over 100% the cost of our wine, but of our grapes, but the wine yet is not there to reflect the market. So, and we made a decision a few years ago to move away from a small appellation to a bigger appellation, just to give a sense of place to the market, which is the opposite what they do in Europe. You know, in Europe, smaller appellation you go, more prestige it is, and the Foothills is the opposite. You know, I think it's Foothills is right there. I mean, we're really very close to over the hump, and then from there it's just going to be easy. Actually, we got the first 100 point, not us as a winery, as a region. One of my neighbor winemakers got 100 points on the Syrah, and that was a huge boom in the market, and open doors to other small wineries.
You don't say that in front of Oded, because he's going to cut. Now he's going to come and pitch your, he's going to boost the prices. You know, listen to him. Look at him. He's writing it down.
Yeah, no, scores is like the credit check. You know, it doesn't matter much. You end up paying always whatever the interest it is. So I think Foothills is doing some great things. I mean, and Andis Wines is on par with that. We're introducing new grapes, new varietals, new winemaking techniques, new farming techniques that the region is embracing it, and it's applying it. Right now, we're fully sustainable farming. You know, we're planning to go towards an organic. So we're trying to be more involved with Mother Nature. I mean, what California has seen in the last 2 years, the temperatures have skyrocketed. I mean, the average temperature has gone up, and we're trying to leave a smaller footprint behind that the following generation do not have to pay our mistakes and our price. So it's Foothills. It's fun. I mean, Foothills is really the wild west of the winemaking. You can do whatever you want, however you want it, and then you always will be able to find somebody that will enjoy, as long as you put love and passion behind it. If you do something that you are proud of what you do, and then it's always going to be somebody that when they open that bottle of wine, they perceive your passion and the quality. You know, the quality is always.
What is your favorite wine that you make? You prefer the Italian varietals, or do you like, I mean, the Semillon,
Semillon is by far my favorite.
It's fantastic. If you're listening to this and you have not had, what's it called? The Dillian Vineyard. Oh my gosh. Like, what a wine, really. I mean, really. But I think the Grand Père, the oldest wine. I mean, the Zinfandel is fantastic. The Cab Franc is great. I mean, every wine is really great. But so you like the Semillon is your favorite?
Semillon is my number one wine that I prefer to drink. I'm a white wine lover. Just keeps me always awake, and because I drink a lot, so if I drink red wine, because
you're a winemaker and you have small children, so yeah. That's just, you're done. Yes, you're done.
But if I have to pick a red wine, Barbera is it's my Italian flag, my Italian proudness. And actually, I named the Barbera di Amador, just kind of like to play on with the word Barbera d'Alba and Barbera d'Asti. So those are my two. Those, beside my children, I think those are my two other children. So I really love what we do. So it's been fun. Italian varietals are fun to make, but at the same time, sometimes I think about Italy, and then I have so much pressure because I want to achieve what is achieved in Italy, and
You've been at it a few thousand years more. So don't put yourself in that bad position.
It might be Lorenzo the younger will do it, not the
All right. Leo, I want to ask you about Chenin and how you are able to do so much with this grape that has really been forgotten. And I mean, it is like the trash grape of the Central Valley, used in jug wine because it throws acidity even if they overcrop it. And yet if you do it right, I mean, obviously some of the most famous places in the Loire Valley make gorgeous Chenin. I'm sure that's inspirational to you, but how do you do that? And is Chenin your real passion?
Absolutely. I mean, as when I worked in Europe as a sommelier, I would go to the Loire Valley, and so there was always a passion for the variety, for the region in general. And when I started working at the Charlie Palmer's Dry Creek Kitchen back in 2001 at Hotel Hillsburg, I did see that there was a niche for interesting whites. As a Chenin Blanc, there used to be one of the most planted varieties in California, and I think the saying is in Napa Valley, the whole western bench, if people want to buy Chenin Blanc, they had to take some of the Cabernet. I mean, it was planted all over on really what's today's prime expensive land. But to your point, Elizabeth, yeah, it maintains acidity in this Mediterranean climate. It can produce a tremendous yield if it's in the Central Valley, irrigated and done correctly in terms of canopy management. And that way, it was just something that the generation before us, or 2 generations before us, were just drinking. It was bulk wine. It wasn't labeled as Chenin Blanc. It was just a big jug wine, generally with some residual sugar. So back to the restaurant. When I worked there, the restaurant was, the program was dedicated to Sonoma County, and there was very few, I would say, wines that was out of the ordinary at the time, which was Chardonnay in many shades. Pinot Gris was hot, Viognier was hot, Sauvignon Blanc as well. But there wasn't that other category. So there was sort of I think I was like, I knew there was a few vineyards around, and unfortunately, and one reason I work with growers and I try and work with them and pay them for the per acre for the land rather than the tonnage, because I want to make sure these wines stay in the ground and these small pieces of history doesn't disappear and become Chardonnay or another housing community or whatever. And I think that's been obviously another problem in California. But so I now work with 3 different Chenin Blanc vineyards from Mendocino down to Santa Barbara County in the Santa Ynez Valley. So it's a big logistic stretch, but very exciting to work with. They're all old wines because I feel like and more coastal if I could. So I don't work with the Central Valley nor the Delta area, but more the coastal regions. So
well, that's where a lot of the old stuff is there too, right? The old sort of
I know there's some up by Lorenzo too. There's a few pockets, but these are small pieces around scattered that wasn't pulled out and has been kept and been sold and used in major blends. My sort of flagship wine from Dry Creek Valley is called Saini Vineyards. This vineyard used to go to Gallo back in the 80s. Later on, it went to Corbel for sparkling wine. So it was cropped heavily and was used for its acidity and picked obviously early for the sparkling project. I started working with them back in 2005. First vintage was, 2006. And it was definitely a hand sale. I came out with this racy, green apple, savory, high acid wine that needed food. Back to the point, it would lift flavors in a ceviche, oysters, or what have you, crab, this time of year. It was definitely a hand sale, I'm telling you. So I remember there used to be a lot more of it. Unfortunately, a portion had to be replanted due to some Pierce's disease, but we've kept some of it, and the growers have been fantastic to work with, the Saini family, and we worked closely together on this project. And today they have their own brand, so it's kind of fun to see growers, kind of transition too. with their name and move on. So
As long as they keep selling fruit to you, right? You can keep
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. No, we have a long relationship and a nice long contract, so that hopefully works since it's in writing. Then later on, I added on a vineyard down in St. Ines, exactly 350 miles down from where we are here in Hillsburg in Sonoma County. And a story in 2009 when I worked at Stumela Vineyards, which I've been winemaker for since 2002, still consults for them. I had an intern and she would bring these wines around. It had no identity really on the label, no variety, not even alcohol. It's just a white table wine from a producer in the San Ynez Valley. So I kind of tracked it down because it was Chenin Blanc and had a very nice sense of minerality. And it took me down to an area in the western part of this region. It turns out this vineyard, and this is the bottle here, the vineyard is called Jurassic Park, not something I came up with, but it's rich in fossils, hence the name. It's a sandy soil, some limestone, some calcareous soil. It is an own rooted vineyard planted the same year as the other one I work with up in Dry Creek, the Seine. And I came down there and I was checking it out, and I asked if I could, if they want to work with me and I could buy some grapes, and they were like, yeah, we are pulling this vineyard out. You can take as much as you want.
Oh.
They had already pulled a section out, and so I took a little bit. This is back in 2011, so 10 years ago. I harvested 3 tons. I made the wine, and today, to put it in perspective, how Chenin Blanc, I guess is my point of this long story, is that how it's transitioned, how it's coming back to something it wasn't, that people now really renowned producers are replanting or planting vineyards. But today, this vineyard is now, the vineyard they pulled out back then, this portion is replanted, plus I want to say there's maybe 14 different buyers from this vineyard. And
Wow.
if I ask, can I get more than my little section that I garden for now 10 whatever years, they're like, no.
Wow. I mean, that's a credit to you also, right?
Yeah,
I'm
not saying that, but it's not just, it's so many pieces in the making, but they promoted this variety, but a lot have happened in people's awareness and varieties, and journalists writing about it. So there's been a lot of different moving parts, and which is so cool to see and a bit a part of, and seeing how things have transitioned. And it's okay that the wine is, and again, it's not about the number, but it's okay that the wine is lower alcohol or higher acid, and there are people out there selling it. There are people out there promoting it. Sommeliers and wine, wine buyers.
Yeah, it's making it. All right, we're going to talk more about that with the patrons but we're going to wrap this up for Facebook Live with a couple questions for Oded, and then we'll stay on and talk to the patrons. But Oded, so I mean, what you have your own vineyard. You talked about that. You contract fruit. You said you've been around for a little while, just a little while. And so what has changed since you started? Industry, climate change, how you do things, all of that. How do you see this as like evolution or
All right, so let's start with the
what has
easy part.
devolved?
Let's start with the easy part. The easy part is climate. And I can tell you definitely that being in the Russian River since '88, you definitely see a change. We used to have way more foggy days. Harvest was way later, so we're harvesting much sooner now. There's less fog, for sure, absolutely. More dry years, and I have not had to do any frost protection in at least 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
So that's definitely, so anybody wants to claim that they're, now, I have to step back because I'm a scientist, I'm a science geek, and I know that, yes, definitely, mankind has contributed a lot to this, but the planet has been warming up for the past 17,000 years since the last ice age. So, 8 years, even 20 years is nothing in, this can change. It's part of continuum. So, but definitely I could see and you do feel that. That's one of the great things about being a winemaker and a grape grower is you remember every year, you remember every spring, because every morning you walk the vines, you see what's happening, you smell the smells, you feel the temperature. So from that point of view, we are definitely in a period of change, and it's been kind of fast lately, and especially with the last couple of years of fires in our area. So that's that aspect of just grape growing and climate, terroir, whatever you want to call it. What bothers me more about what has changed in the wine industry, and funnily enough, it's also the same thing in the surfing industry, is that as wine becomes more popular and as it becomes such a big industry, I really am bothered by the fact that everything is flowing to the lowest common denominator. So people like Leo, that's working with Chenin Blanc, is great. It's just like the Slow Food Society managed to support small people who were raising heritage turkey breeds that otherwise were going to disappear because they don't produce chests, turkey breasts that are 20 pounds, but they're way more flavorful. So I think people like Leo, people like what they do in the Sierra, and I think I'm trying to do it with Longboard, promote stuff that's not just formula
Coca-Cola.
wine that starts drinking. They all taste the same. You can't tell some Pinot Noirs from Syrah or Cabernet these days. That bothers me. That bothers me. The fact that it's kind of the factories, the big things. That's concerning
It's
because us, the small
homogenization, right?
guys.
It's homogenization, and it's Coca-Cola. So it doesn't matter what vintage it is because it's Coke. Every year
Exactly.
it's the same thing. And then I think the problem is that it trains people to think that that's what wine is supposed to be. And then when they encounter a longboard wine that's different from the one from last year because it was a different vintage, it can be, well, I don't like that anymore. Well, it's the vintage, you know what I mean? So that's getting away from the land. It is very tough. Obviously, this is partially why we do this, right? So the last question that I have, and we're running a little bit late, so just real quick from the three of you is, what do you want people to know about small wineries?
We're like the farmers market, right? You could you could probably buy on Amazon tomatoes, right? Or you could go to Safeway or whatever and buy tomatoes. But if you want something good, you either grow it in your backyard or you go to and almost everybody in the US now has some kind of farmer market close by. You want to go to your grower, which is local, and is trying to do this the best way they can. I mean, people ask me about organic and biodynamic, and I'm telling them, you know what? I live in the vineyard. My kids drink the water from the well in the vineyard. Why would I want to spray anything in the vineyard? So that's what we represent, and that's what I think people should know about small wineries is that these are real people. That we really try to do something that is possibly a little bit more perishable, possibly a touch more expensive, but there's a reason for that. It's really a product that's more real and tastes better.
Leo?
I mean, to a lot of the points Oded made, his family, small operations, a lot of small handcrafted wines that just deserve attention. And obviously, especially this time and what everybody gone through the last year or so is, it's difficult to be visual on a big scene where there's a lot of big players that can outnumber you. So I think honestly, I just try and make honest wines that has a sense of place and sense of variety that works, as we've been going over with food, and if people try them, that's all I can ask for. And hopefully the best case scenario is when they try them in the right format or the right setting and the right pairing, and that's hopefully those people will come back, and that's what we do. That's why we work hard. We wear many hats, from working in the winery to the vineyard to sales and other things, and it's definitely a love affair, and I love it. So it's great.
That's awesome. All right, Lorenzo, quickly, and then we're gonna sign off of Facebook, and then the patrons will ask you some questions. But
how people remember a small winery. I think small wineries build memories. You know, we don't end up just by selling a bottle of wine. We tell you a story and our passion that you will remember that, because you've got to know these amazing people, that the story doesn't end up just you purchasing the wine. It's going to continue when you drink the wine, and that's something that you will, the quality, I mean, quality is there. Quality of memories and hospitality is something a small winery, a small business will always put you in first place than the dollars.
Well, that is a great end to the Facebook Live. So we're going to say goodbye to the Facebook Live people. So I am just signing off on that. Laura, can you? Okay, it looks like it's done. All right. So anybody who wants to chat, you guys have about 10, 15 minutes to Facebook Live. So we're going to say goodbye to chat. Marietta and Steve asked, Lorenzo, do you make any Italian whites?
This year I'm making Vermentino for the first time.
Ooh.
Soon it will be 100%. This year, it's going to go under the painted field Cuvée Blanc. I don't know where the camera it is, but
yeah, it's hard to see. Yeah.
Sorry, but it's this year it's Vermentino, Semillon, and Chenin Blanc, and eventually, as the Vermentino the vineyard will be satisfying enough for my quality and for my preference to be 100%, and then I'll make eventually. It's a Roero. I'm planning to work with Roero Arnay. I don't know how I'm going to sell it. I will probably end up drinking it. So.
Okay, I have one word for you. Fiano. Please do this for me, please. Okay. I already begged Luca from Barbersville, and he is doing a Fiano already. Now it's your turn. I'm like, all the Italians that I know, I'm like, just grow Fiano for me. I'll just buy it.
I want to say, well, actually, I have contact for a vineyard. It just Piano and Semillon to me are so similar to me. I mean, maybe I haven't found the right vineyard, but I will.
Then grow Greco. I don't care. I need some Campagna. Get me some Campagna. Caracante. I don't know. Do something. You get those Southern Italians.
I will do Coda di Volpe.
Okay. All right. The foxtail. All right. So let's see. Oded is giving a code on his wines for WFMP, special discount on longboard shop through Sunday. If anybody else wants to do that, let us know and we'll post it up on Patreon. All right. So what other questions do you all have? It looks like Brian, you said South Africa, Pinotage. Oh man. And Steen. Oh, Leo, Brian wants to know about that connection, the Steen connection. You gotta unmute.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Steen connection?
Yeah. It doesn't have anything to do with South Africa, right?
Yeah. No, the closest we get is, I think, the longitude. The Steen connection is a middle name on my dad's side. In Denmark, it's a common first name for boys, but on my dad's side, all my female cousins, my sister, etc., are all Steen, which also means stone. A South African winemaker told me once that the reference to the Steen name that was brought down by the Dutch back in the 1600s, that the grapes on a cluster look like stacked bricks if you picture like a brick wall, which is why my Jurassic Park, I call it the Steen. And the label is a little difficult to see. It's supposed to symbolize a very rustic or abstract brick wall with the wine growing out of it. It's kind of deep.
It's very cool. I mean, Oded, incidentally, while we're on labels, that is a very cool label. Oded does all of the art for his own labels, and he never talks about that. He is a graphic master, but he has like a bazillion things that he does, but he never talks about it. All of you guys, like when you start digging in, you start asking questions about the three of you. It's like, oh, and you also do that. And you also do that. All right,
I would say all my labels has a meaning. I mean, it has a tie into either the place of the wine or the soil, more like the color of the label or the soil. There's definitely a different aspect of it, a deeper meaning to it. So
does it come to you while you're while you're making the wine? How do you decide that?
like my first label, I wanted to be
Yep.
the idea. So this seems a little white, but its idea was like sandy. There's it's sort of sandier soil, lighter soil, and then there's a little green, and they were sort of symbolizing the greener part of the Chenin Blanc and the plant and stuff. So there's definitely a tie-in and a story with a lot of them. The Jurassic we use rather than foil, we use beeswax with Chenin Blanc kind of age and get sort of that honeyed note. So that's kind of the tie-ins of that.
Interesting.
That's very cool. Oded, I think you guys, when
To
we're
me,
off,
I mean,
guys
what
can talk
drives
about that.
me, whether it's winemaking or anything else, it's what I love is the creative process. It doesn't matter what it is. So that's part of it, whether it's cooking or designing a label, or to me, it's all mishmash. It's all together. It's all somehow tied together to one thing or another. It's all about being creative in everything you do. I'm just feel so lucky that I get to do it, winemaking for a living, because I don't feel like I've worked one day in the past 36 years. I'm just having fun.
I agree.
How can that be, since it's such back-breaking work? I mean, I've seen you, I guess like I try not to come during harvest because you guys are just too busy, but post-harvest is just so tiring, right? Like it's so exhausting.
Post-harvest for sure.
Yeah.
But during harvest, you
Adrenaline.
sleep, 4 hours a night, but I got so much energy, so much adrenaline. It's like I can't wait to get up and go to the winery or go to the vineyard. And sometimes I go to the vineyard at midnight when we start harvesting, go sleep a couple hours and go to the winery to receive the grapes. I mean, it's like you actually like that. It's like without the caffeine.
That is my favorite time of year because I don't spend that much time home, so my wife has to deal with the kids. So,
Yeah.
Joking.
Oh my gosh, my namesake, Elizabeth. What? That's horrible. I'm gonna bond with her when I see her.
I have a 6-year-old daughter that is going for 16. So, that's what I'm talking.
Yeah, I know. What was I going to ask you about? So let's ask about how COVID has been for you guys. Has it been like a train wreck? I mean, I feel like this is what I have been hearing from some of your peers, which is like, we got to just hold on a little while longer to make it. And then, hopefully everybody will come back. But if it keeps going on and lingers, there's going to be problems. Are you feeling stressed out about that?
Well, to be honest, I mean, COVID, we finally got the news today that we were allowed to open at outdoor tasting this morning, actually. We're great at Sacramento. But, I mean, we are 1,600 feet elevation. I can't guarantee the sun. And how can you sit down outside when it's going to be cold very soon? I think, I mean, I look at COVID in two different ways, the good and the bad. For me, COVID actually, the greater thing that COVID has done to me personally, I got to know more of my kids and my family. I've spent so much time with them, and for once I slept more than 100 days in the same bed, which was amazing. And then the bad part of that is, my business has been down because I do work on restaurant industry. Most of my business is down, and it's been 80% down. But somebody sent on our email, we're just building the route for our greater 20s. Every history repeats itself. The Spanish flu brought the 20s. We're going to build our own 20s, and
the roaring 20s.
It's not gonna last forever. Let's enjoy ourselves as much as we can, because then we'll not have time.
I just want to say that I feel that you've also really bonded with your facial hair, and also, the big nice hair. I feel like that's become a real good bond between them. I'm sorry, you never should have told me that you hadn't shaved it.
That's what my daughter tells me, and it's sweet.
It really looks good. I'm very surprised. As I said, I expected you to be like a Yeti. There is, if you look in the chat, Roxanne has given a fantastic compliment to each of you. Lorenzo, fantastic experience after a hiking trip, stopping by Andis after a big trip with her 2 huskies last fall, even before she knew about underground wine events. Enjoying Oded's Malbec. Perfect after a long day of work. Leo, excited to try the Chenin. Yep. And with your global backgrounds, what was the expectation for how involved a winemaker would be in the vineyard? Great question, Roxanne. And versus what you experienced and what it means to you now personally and realistically. Like, how much time are you? I think what you're saying is, how much time do you spend in the vineyard? Because, you know, when I interview the European winemakers, the first thing that they are always so confused by the American model, that there is a vineyard manager and there is a winery person. And I think there was a podcast with this woman from Chateau La Cardon in the Médoc, and Magali Guyon. And she said, I think she said it so perfectly. She said, if I am not in the vineyard, then I don't have an opportunity to find out if something goes wrong in the winery, how to trace that back. And so I think that was I mean, what an insight that was. And I know that all of you are intimately kind of locked in, but what's the, you know, do you spend, I mean, Oded, you live at the vineyard, but like, you know, do you spend a lot of time, and Leo, it's got to be challenging because you can't be everywhere, but for the ones that are close by, how much time do you spend?
May I start? For me, vineyard it's the most important thing on producing wine, because we don't make the wine. We're just it's a different aspect when I think about making a wine. For me, if I don't know where the fruit it is, how is it farmed, how is it pruned and everything, it's hard to give an identity to the bottle of wine. And it's everything starts from the vineyard. I sometimes joke, I think we are the most unfair paid to compare to what other people do on the field, because if we get a good fruit, all what we do just sit down and stare to the barrels and go taste them once in a while. It's all about the quality of the fruit. You get great fruit, you do great harvest, you do a great farming, and everything reflects in the glass. And the only intervention that we have to do, it's something goes south, you know, or if you want to input your footprint on that. But it all have to start from the vineyard, from that one. If it's not there, then you don't need a winery. You can do whatever you want. You just need a lab.
Again, you can make Coke, right? What about Leo and Oded? Thoughts about that?
There's nothing new under the sun. I mean, it's no different than a chef that wants to make a marinara sauce, and you could go to, you know, again, your local grocery store and buy some tomatoes that were, you know, picked 3 weeks ago in Mexico and ripened on the way, or you can go to your backyard and pick up whichever, you know, your heirloom tomatoes or your, you know, San Marzano tomatoes or whatever you think is super ripe now, and the marinara sauce is going to make itself. Or you go to your farmer's market. So it's the same thing. You know, I approach it like a chef would his ingredients for a dish that you want to make. So, you know, for me, it's easy. I live on the vineyard, and other than one vineyard, which I love because it's in Mendocino and it's a Carignan. I think I sent you a bottle of the Carignan.
Yes, you did. Here, this is what it looks like, guys.
86-year-old vineyard
label also.
Wow.
Old vine Carignan. Again, just like Chenin Blanc for white, Carignan used to be the most planted red variety on the planet, but since it can produce 12 tons an acre, if you know, it makes blah wines. But if you have head trained, dry farmed, old vines, oh my God!
Just ask Priorat, right? I mean, that's what they're doing in Priorat now too. So exactly. Yes, you have to get it right.
Yeah, and you just wait when you know, my Syrah vines are only 22 years old, but you wait another 20 years and you'll see what comes out of them when they're older. So it's like I got nothing but anticipation and fun and waiting, because old vines, you know, they're the greatest.
Yeah.
The greatest.
Leo, what do you feel about the vineyard?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't own any vineyards. That's the California budget is over my pay grade, unfortunately. But I agree with the story you're telling about Médoc. That is the ultimate story. I sell wine in Europe, in Northern Europe, as I mentioned, in Denmark and other places. But and that is people's idea about how it works, that you work in the vineyard and the winery and you live on the property. The American model, the California model, generally speaking, is a lot different, as my logistic is definitely a logistic nightmare, because I travel south and north and I go everywhere because I want to work with certain varieties and certain vineyards and growers. And I try to have a good relationship. It's like anything else in the world. It's a relationship business. I can't be there. I mean, I work, if I could, I tried, but then we get into some other California rules of what's legal and not, technical, what you're not supposed to be and doing. And so I work with them closely. What happened during the season, and I'm out there, and if I can, and obviously making all the picking decision and stuff. But I don't live on a vineyard, and I don't execute the work myself. But
don't you feel like, though, because you work with old vines, that some of that is just kind of, I mean, it may be a little bit different because old vines kind of do their thing. I mean, it's not. Right?
Exactly. I tried
farming them. There's not much. Is there that much that you can? It's not like, the pruning is really. You don't have to worry about that. They're like so unproductive, right?
There are 3 or 4 really main events during the growing season. I think that could make a difference. But in the end of the day, yeah, I mean, again, as I'm saying, that is the model that works here, and you work with growers, and you have a trust, and you have a relationship, and that's how it works. And if you didn't, and there was a disconnect, obviously you would have issues. But I understand for people that grew up in a vineyard, and that's how they worked, and they only made that wine. Here we have a different freedom and a different flexibility, which is why I like. Initially, back in '99, when I came to Healdsburg, I had an internship in Burgundy lined up. For a few reasons, I didn't choose it back then. I thought, being in my later 20s, I thought California was a lot more sexy sounding than Burgundy. And maybe the language was another thing. But bottom line is that here, I would never start my own brand in Burgundy if that had happened back then. There's a freedom here. There's opportunities, and I grabbed one of those, and I ran with it as far as I could. But making a little bit of wine and trying to stay afloat and doing a few other projects for other people has helped me through the last year, as your other question was. So
yeah, you know what? The other thing I wanted to ask you and Oded, because Lorenzo does not do consulting, is you both, and Oded doesn't do it in California, but you both are consulting winemakers and you make your own brands. So what's the strategy difference? Like, is there a strategy difference between how you're approaching your stuff? Obviously you have the freedom to do whatever the hell you want, right? So like when you're doing your own thing, you do whatever. But do you ever look at the brand and what sort of the style goal is? And I mean, Oded, you're working in such a very different, like it's like Mars compared to where you are. Oded can I tell them the region?
Sure.
Okay, he consults in British Columbia, so in the Okanagan Valley. So it's going to be totally different. I mean, it's a completely different world. But what's the strategy?
For me, it's very easy. Number one, I'm not one of those people that will do consulting by the hour, or I help you fix a wine that you screwed up. That's just not what I like to do. So the only projects that I will get involved with, it's really more mentoring than consulting. So I would like to basically work with people and use my experience and the fact that I've seen a lot in 30-something years, but to empower you to make your own wine, so eventually you don't need me, but I'm part of the process. So that's what interests me, and especially in regions that have not yet maybe got the recognition and maybe not the full potential that they possibly deserve. And the Okanagan is definitely one of those, and there's other places in the world. I consult a little bit in Israel, but really not on a big scale, but just because I really want them to see them succeed, and I think they will. especially because of what's happening in the food scene there. But it's going to take time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Leo?
So it's about, it's not about, I don't see a conflict with my own brand, because my own brand is local to this and to, my creativity, and I'm a little crazy guy. I draw a lot of inspiration from Frank Zappa, that, one of my favorite things that he said was, without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible. So that's the people that I get inspiration from. But that's me, and
Yeah, I
somehow
mean,
I managed
I
to
don't,
survive.
and I'm not suggesting that, like, that there's some sort of, completely weird thing with the consulting. I'm just wondering, Leo, you started out working for, I know I'm going to mess up saying their name, Stuhlmuller.
I'm a consultant for Stuhlmuller today, but I started at Stuhlmuller in 2002.
Right. So I guess now, I mean, you've been doing that for so long, but now you get to see this other side where you've got your own thing going on. So has that changed? I guess now, I mean, the interesting thing is, now that you've been away from it, you're not working for them, you've got your own gig. Is that, and you've had that for a while too. I mean, it's not to say that it isn't, but you've pulled out of, you're not, you're a consulting winemaker. So does that kind of, do you look at it differently now? Are you doing different things with their brand, or are you just sort of, keeping things afloat?
So, I mean, the Stuhlmuller family, which I started with, was a fantastic experience in so many ways, that big vineyard owners sold a lot of grapes to a lot of wineries and made some wine on site. We made maybe 15,000 cases when on the high when we were doing it. And it also had a lot of freedom of experimenting in the vineyard. At that point, I was much more involved in the vineyard on a daily basis, because the winery is on the property with the vineyard. So, but there was also something to be said about, you can try a lot of things like low yield, picking early, doing this. It's all about trying and figure out what makes sense. I think Lorenzo was touching on this earlier in the beginning. It's all about what really what is the right match. I mean, the grapes of this vineyard, how does it work? What's the best fit? Try and adapt or do something because somebody told you, or because you think that's the right thing. I think the right fit is really what matters, and I think that's a part of our job description, to figure out how is these grapes performing the best, at least to the style. So that's the house style. So my winery, my own brand, I've gone different ways. I think it's important, as now a consultant, I don't look at myself really that way, but because I've been attached to that winery so many years as a winemaker, and I really grew, that was a part of me, and I took pride in it, that it was really important that the family name is on the label, the brand, the recognition, and the integrity of that is key points, So I do a few other things, and now you mentioned it, a consultant. I think it's the practical side of me. I do some negotiant brands where we can bottle any time of the year, so it's not interfering with my harvest, because the harvest, I really dedicate September, October, I really dedicate the time to my own wines, and I do a few other things, around the year. I work with a fairly big, now COVID has put a hole in that, but a big producer of wine in keg and tap wine and canned wines, and it takes the whole attitude about wine and the snobby effect away. And I actually think it's very cool to work with and see how you can grow a business in a short time. And it was all about variety, honest, clean wine in a different format at a higher volume. And that's been an interesting thing for me for the last maybe 5 years. I've been working with these guys.
How do you feel about cans? Do you think that have they come a long way? We have,
I think, and we'll see more of it. I mean, within wine, it's less than 1%, but within the category, it's been a tremendous explosion of, and I think the dot-comers or the millenniums it's definitely a category that is here to stay for sure. So I think we'll see more and more of it. Wine on tap, wine in cans for different, everything for different occasion and a different time. So
Yeah, but there's
it's
a
fun
Long
to be
Island
part of.
brand. There's a Long Island brand called Bridge Lane, who is anybody that was at the DC event probably sampled it. And one of in the podcast that I did with, Lieb and Bridge Lane, they were talking about, because one of the things that I found early on with the cans is that, when you have a Coke out of a can, you always taste the can. You always taste that metallic note to it. Some of that is just, you're putting your mouth on it. Some of it is that the cans were kind of flawed. They were using the same, they didn't have a coating, but what they told me is that they've come a really long way with figuring out how to line those cans so you don't get that conflict with aroma and all of that.
You have to submit the wine, and they check them for the liner and for the corrosion.
Yeah. Cool. All right. The last question Luke had, Oded already answered it because he said he has recipes on his website. And then we will let everybody go. Is favorite food pairings for each of the favorite wines that you make? Let's start, Leo. We're on you right now, and you are the sommelier. Pressure's on. Pull it out.
Yeah, I get that question quite often. I would say the simpler the better, like anything else in life. I think, the perfect cheese with the perfect wine, oyster with champagne or whatever. I mean, those are my favorite. If personally I have to, if you're asking about my wine,
yes,
something like this Dry Creek Chenin Blanc, this Zany, a California, nice warm summer day. It can be as simple as just a green pineapple on a skewer with a basil leaf, just something snack on the porch before dinner, a glass of wine with something that pops with the acid, the sugar. It can be a little more elaborated. I was recently, I was just in Denmark in November, and with the sales rep, we were out selling wine, and he took me to a new restaurant. And what we didn't know, they were serving us lunch, these guys, so very kind. And they served us this root vegetable soup with pancetta or some pork belly, some salt notes. And we had brought him one of my Chenin Blancs. It's a no sulfur. It's definitely off the beaten path white wines. It's not filtered. It's kind of cloudy. It has some skin contact. It's not a wine for everybody, as we talked about earlier, because it's not like your soft round wine. It's kind of aggressive acid, but low alcohol. And he poured it with that root vegetable soup with a little bit of dairy, and that salty element really just softened it up and rounded off. And to me, that was just as simple as that. And it was a fantastic combination, and great to see your own wine and shining in a light because of a chef that kind of created this. And that was really cool to experience. So
that's the magic. Brian Kerr says that your Chenin with fish tacos is amazing. So
there you go.
There you go. All right.
Acid horse. Yeah.
That's a surfer thing.
Yeah. Lorenzo?
Well, just to make it fun and simple, I think my wines pair good with good food and good company. That's the key of every wine to make it taste better.
You're so Italian. Give us an answer.
No, but Semillon, usually I do like to pair it with raw fish. I'm a big fan of sushi. I'm a big fan of raw oysters. So I think my wine has a lot of minerality and acidity. So I think it pairs well. And when it comes to Barbera, I'm a big fan of a good pizza, and a good tomato-based dish. And that's what I would pair my Barbera. I mean, it's like Leo said, it has to be a balance, acids on acids, and you got to define what's your dish it is and what you're achieving from your dish, and then the wine, you play around that. But good food, honest to God, the best thing to pair with wine is good food.
You're so Italian. You're so all right, Oded, you're going to bring it home, and then we're going to wrap it up. And someone asked about what happened with Sunday's event, and I'm going to give you some inside gossip because you're patrons, and then we will wrap it up. Oded.
So with the bubbles, which is of course one of my big loves, I actually love stuff very, very simple, either like salted cashews or mixed nuts with the bubbles, or even popcorn. Popcorn goes great with Méthode Champenoise. With my Sauvignon Blanc, my favorite thing these days is Dungeness crab, maybe even Dungeness crab salad with a little bit of like maybe pink grapefruit, stuff like that. I'm drinking now the Mer Sauvage Pinot Noir. That's one of my favorite Pinots this time, and I have a great recipe on the website. It's like a salmon with it's got that sweet and salty umami thing. So it's basically a salmon that I just kind of broil a little bit, and then at the very end I just mix blackberries, like, or blackberry jam if you don't have fresh blackberries, with just a little bit of soy and sesame oil, and roast it for another like 30 seconds out of the broiler, and then you get that sweet and salty stuff going with a Pinot Noir, with that little bit of cherry in the Pinot Noir. That's awesome. But you know me, I'm a Syrah guy, so nothing beats a great leg of lamb with Syrah, or even lamb rack, or even lamb lollipops. And one of the greatest things about COVID is I treated myself to a wood burning pizza oven, and I tell you what, it is such. I can't wait for you to come, because I'm getting to be quite a cook in a wood
You
burning pizza
already
oven.
are. I was gonna say, what I was going to say is that, you know, Oded keeps talking about cooking, and now we all want to come over your house. And
Come on over.
we've been to your house. You are
I
a
know.
damn good cook. And there's nothing else to say. And you know that I am a pescatarian, so I will say that eggplant and mushrooms also go fantastically well with your Syrah. I am proof positive of that.
Absolutely. And you know, these days, especially right now, I've been going mushroom hunting almost every week. We have the boletes right now, and matsutakis, and hedgehogs. So
All right, stay
come
away
on
from
over.
it. Keep on the hallucinogenics, because you need those right now, and get away from the poisonous ones. That's all I can say.
Pass some along the other ones.
Come
All
on
right.
over.
Thank you guys so much. You are more winemakers. You are more than welcome to hop off. Patrons, one minor note about Sunday. Laura, would you like to, since you're afraid that I'm going to be too brazen about this? You guys know I'm always very honest. We had an event on Sunday. One Gratis didn't show up. La Follette came late, and Greg La Follette came late, and then we had Meeker, and we just did it. I'm not gonna lie, like, we were a little concerned about how that was going to happen. And what it turned out was that it was not a very, I would say, positive underground wine event, virtual underground wine event. Laura, am I doing okay still? Okay. So, and you know that we try to keep things positive here, and try to make things good, and present our team, because like we really are a team, right? Like everybody who takes part in underground wine events, we're all friends. Obviously, you guys feel that. I know you see it and you feel it, and it's true. We love these people. Unfortunately, it didn't really go that well. So what I have told Greg La Follette, who is funny enough, he wrote me like a 5-page email after that, mainly about starter culture and yeast. So what I've done is I've invited him to come on for a patron only event. So he's just going to do it with us. He's going to talk about yeast and mouthfeel and all the stuff that he's studied before. We're going to ask him questions, and then we will post it on YouTube as if it is an underground wine event just with him. So it'll be a little bit shorter than some of the other ones because it's one producer, but in fairness, I think he has a lot of really interesting things to say, but it just did not really work out very well with Meeker. So there won't be a code. We've taken it actually down off Facebook Live. We did not record it here. It just wasn't, it was not a positive thing. And we're not going to have anybody look bad, us or the other person. So we're just going to keep it good. I mean, look at what a great event this was tonight. Like these three guys are just so fantastic. And obviously, we've got our next one on Sunday with Fred Peterson and Campana Ranch. And who am I forgetting, Laura?
Kieran.
here in Robinson, and we love them too. So, I mean, they're not going to be the foreign invasion. We had to reschedule that because of what went on nationally. You guys were supposed to be the cap to this, but unfortunately that was the night the Capitol was raided. So we stopped, we did not, or the night after. So we decided that everybody needed a little break, but, you know, it's all about, you know, us being positive and loving and loving the people that we work with. So again, you know, the no assholes policy that Laura and I established early on, you know, continues, and we try only to introduce you to people that we really care about, we love, and we love their wines. So that is going to continue. We'll have 3 more. And then, you know, maybe we'll do this again. I'm just hoping that we can do this live, you know, again at some point, and bring this on the road. And for those of you in the Midwest, you know, one of the things that Laura and I have talked about ad nauseum, and I've talked about this for years, is that everyone forgets the Midwest. And so we want to come and bring these wineries to you in the Midwest. And we want you to be able, even if you might have to travel, but it's not traveling to New York, it's not traveling to DC. We're going to do a little mini road show, and we're going to bring these guys and women on the road. And we are going to give you, you know, the opportunity to meet them, because it's not fair. Yes, Jamie, Milwaukee. Yes, it's on the list. Okay?
It'll be a little bit more intimate than our usual underground wine events. We're not bringing the full producer crew with us, but it'll be fantastic events. Absolutely.
Yes. And so, you know, that was supposed to happen last summer. It wasn't going to happen, you know, obviously didn't happen, but we will do that because we feel like, you know, we don't think of you as flyover states. We think of you as humans who don't have an opportunity to see and have this stuff because you don't live on the coast. That's kind of bullshit. So we're going to bring that to you, and I think you're going to love it. So that will be coming up as soon as we get, you know, everybody gets the needle in their arm, and there we go. All right. So thank you, everybody. This is going to go up live on YouTube. So if you came late, you can watch it later. And I appreciate all of you, of course, as usual, and love to the 3 producers and to Laura, who could not talk because her kids were screaming in the background, incidentally, not because she didn't want to, but let's be real.
My door was safe. So my door kept getting banged on.
She was texting me being like, I can't ask any questions. The kids are screaming. They're having a ball, but they're screaming. So that's the reality. And meanwhile, MC Ice is upstairs with my kids, so I don't have to worry about it. All right. Love you all. Patrons, you're fantastic. I'm going to do a Canary Islands mini class just because, you know, I did a tip a long time ago about it, and it's so bizarre. And we will see these producers again. Love you all. All right. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Bye.
Thank you, Laura.